Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty, and today I'm joined by Sean Martin and Alison McConnell. Haggerty 10 on the Twitter handle, at Sean Martin TCW, his Twitter handle, and Ali there at the bottom. How are you doing, guys? We all right?
Good, thank you. You?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Another quiet weekend in the land of Celtic. Not. So we'll just start with everything, shall we? Johnny Kenny came in, Sean, and they've now been linked with Riley McGree, Australian midfielder. Preferably plays in the number 8 box-to-box midfielder, seemingly an impressive showreel, and you will have seen his wonderful scorpion kick goal that was up for a Puskas Award, I believe, at one point. And obviously Ange has extensive knowledge of him, and he's looking to bring him into the club. Left field one for you, Sean, a surprise, that one?
Not any more so than a couple of the players that we've signed so far. I mean, that'll be, if he comes in, that'll be 17 players across both windows. Obviously, not all of those are bona fide first teamers, you would argue, but still 17 new signings is a lot. One more, I'm sure they qualify for a discount at the printers. But no, I like the look of him, to be honest. I like the look of him. I think he's another one, you just mentioned it there, he's another one that Ange knows. So he knows what he's getting, and therefore presumably thinks that he'll give him something that the others won't, or at least add to the stuff that they already do give him. I'll be taking a closer look at him after this video, but certainly from what I've read so far, a lot of the characterisations of his play are encouraging. You say he's box to box. He can also play number 10. And in fact, well, I've obviously been saying to you for months that Rio Hatate's attributes are kind of offering the same type of energy and bite and different things that Ryan Christie brought to the table. And I'm sure I'll live or die by that, considering, as far as I'm aware, I think I was the first to put him and Celtic in the same sentence. There are a lot of Christie similarities with Riley McGree as well. He's been characterised similarly, which is stuff like good work rate, likes to score and create, a kind of risk-reward type in the final third. So it's all good things that you're hearing. And he's only 23, so it's not like it's not an age isn't against him. It's a good time to be signing him as well.
Alison, your thoughts? Was that a left field suggestion for you, or do you think it's just another one that Ange has extensive knowledge of and is using that?
I don't think it's left field. I think when you consider his background and you look at Ange Postecoglou, I don't think it's entirely left field. He obviously has an awareness of him. I would agree with Sean. I think there are similarities between the two players, and it just I think it makes you think maybe about how he wants depth within the squad and maybe wanting two genuine players for every position. I don't know how difficult that is to actually achieve at times in getting the right balance between your squad. But again, he's a boy at 23. You're thinking, is it an investment almost? You bring these players in, similar maybe to Jota, if you could get a permanent deal for Jota over the line, and you're thinking, well, they're young enough then that you invest some money in it, but you could actually still go on and recoup it in terms of a business sense. And then in terms of what they offer on the park, I don't think there'll be any surprises there for Ange Postecoglou. I think he knows exactly the philosophy that he wants within his team. And I think you've seen it in glimpses at times this season coming to fruition. And I think now it's about bringing in players that he believes can execute the vision that he wants the team to play in.
Well, just seen a couple of comments there, Sean. John Coyle saying the way McGree is described as a poster boy for an Ange player. And Simon
That sounds very similar to the way that I characterised Ryan Christie before he left at the start of the season.
He was superb at Adelaide United. You look at his showreel and it is impressive, and obviously he's been doing very well at Birmingham City too, because I believe they wanted to keep him. So it sounds like a coup if Celtic can get this one over the line as well, Sean.
I mean, obviously, with the amount of players that you're signing, without being a Debbie Downer about it, you can't expect every single player to be an absolute steal, basically. But you can look and do your research, and you can trust that so far Ange's eye for a player has been good, and he does seem like he'll fit the mould. Whether it will be as a first teamer, whether it will be as a rotation, or whether they're all essentially with a few going to be rotation pieces now to combat the stresses of the last half of the season. It is, at least bodes well. It makes sense, which is, to be honest, sometimes that's what you need to look at as much as anything else. Does it make sense to sign a player of this type? yes, I would say.
Alison, I think you not nailed it in the head when you said that this is now Ange trying to get a good player for every position and a good backup player as well, or 2 good players for each position. I'm firmly of the belief that's what he's aiming for moving forward, and he certainly seems to be getting backed at the minute by the board on that front.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. To be fair, I've argued previously and in previous windows that the perception of a parsimonious board isn't entirely accurate. I think when you look at the funds that are spent, I think if there is a deal goes over the line now, I think it could be up to maybe £25 million over the last 2 windows. Now, you would have to offset that by saying Celtic maybe banked around, 28 if you bring in all the sale of players. So there is a balancing of the books, but I think there has obviously been investment in the squad. I think it was necessary. I think at the end of last season, it was quite clear that there was a need for a restructure. I think in some ways the spine of the team stayed the same. You had core players like Callum McGregor and James Forrest staying in there, players who had been over the course before, but they were always going to be big shoes to fill with Odsonne Edouard leaving, Ryan Christie leaving, Christopher Ajer leaving, players that I think had been whispers around for the last 12 months before they had made it to the exit door. But I think the money that has been spent has been well spent so far. I think what you've seen is a return for the players that you've brought in. I think the thing you would say about Kyogo is that Odsonne Edouard disappeared with barely a backwards glance from the Celtic support. Some of that might have been due to performances last season, but also the impact that Kyogo had immediately. He came in and endeared himself to the support through his performances, through the goals, his movement, very intelligent footballer. Celtic's next headache might actually be in keeping hold of him. I think when you have a player who has such quality and who's very notable in terms of what he offers the team, I think you almost want to keep him hidden, or Celtic might almost want to keep him hidden, because without question he will start to attract attention from elsewhere. But I would agree, the manager has been backed, and what I would also say has been very obvious over the last 2 windows is that it's fairly clear who is identifying players and who is pushing for the players that are coming in.
I agree with that completely, Sean, as well. This is the hand of Ange all over it, isn't it?
Yep, aye. They obviously, looking at it from a kind of bigger picture perspective, me and many others thought that last summer was going to be a season where maybe it was a wee bit more of a modern structure within the club. That hasn't come to pass. But in a way, it's almost became a blessing in disguise with the likes of Kyogo being identified by the manager himself and recruited in that way. I mean, the jury will also obviously be out on the January signings until they've had time to settle in and play. So in that sense, the bigger picture still isn't necessarily where I'd like it to be for Celtic as a modern football club. But that's no criticism of Ange and his eye for a player so far, because that's been good.
And Simon Thomas comes in and says he thinks that Riley is a younger Aaron Moy type player. Remains to be seen, and we'll see him at close quarters if he does indeed sign. Now, another one who seems to be edging over the line, seems to be edging closer and closer every day, is Jota. Alison, there was a report last night saying that the clubs are close to finalising a deal, and that could be completed in the next few days. But as I say, edging ever closer, so...
Yeah, I think I've made my thoughts on it fairly clear. I think Celtic will do everything to get a deal for Jota over the line, because it absolutely makes sense to do it now. I think you can see it in both a footballing and in a business sense. It ticks so many boxes. I'd say it'd be secondary only to Kyogo in terms of the impact that he's had this season and the influence he's had in first team matters. I would offer a note of caution. I think it very much comes down to a decision from the player himself. I think it depends on the advice he may be receiving from elsewhere. If there's someone in his ear just saying, if you hang fire here until the end of the season, there may be a more lucrative offer from somewhere else. If you continue to perform well, there may be other options come the end of the season. So I would just counter what has been going on over the weekend and the kind of chat that's there, and say it will very much be, the ball's very much in the player's court, I think. Whether he decides another year or two in Glasgow might then be the stepping stone to elsewhere, as has been the model so often for Celtic over the last decade or so, or whether he fancies just sitting tight and seeing what else might be available.
Sean, we spoke on Thursday or Friday and we said that if Celtic signed the 3 Japanese players and then completed deals for Jota and Carter Vickers, that would represent a good window. With Ryan McGree possibly coming in and Jota and or Cameron Carter Vickers signing a deal in the January transfer window, that would represent a magnificent window, really, wouldn't it?
It would. I mean, what can you say about Jota that we've not already, to be honest? I mean, he's been superb so far. The injury's probably the only blot on his copybook.
Yeah.
I've said a few times to you both that given it's Celtic's option to buy, I wouldn't get too disheartened if a permanent deal isn't done in this window, and that is still true. But if it is as close to completion as is being reported, then great, another piece of the jigsaw sorted.
Yeah, and that's what it is, isn't it? He's building something here, isn't he, Alison? I think, he termed it himself as building a beautiful house or a beautiful building or whatever you want to call it. But he's certainly on the way to building something here, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think he was always going to need at least 2 or 3 windows before you truly sense his own stamp on the team. I think after this window, there's an argument there to be said that it's very much a Postecoglou team now. It's a team where he's had huge influence over recent windows to identify the kind of players that fit the mould with which he wants to play and marry that to the players that he inherited when he came into the club. But yeah, I think that's true for every manager. I think that you want to bring your own authority to a team and you want to be able to shape the direction that it takes, be that through the way that you play and also through the personnel that you have available to go out and perform that way.
Sean, I posed the question, is this Celtic taking shape under Ange now?
Aye, and as I said, after the first window, the second window was always going to be phase 2 of the rebuild. I'm glad, I'm almost surprised that they've backed him so quickly and so efficiently before the January window had even opened. That does bode well, and I hope that is a sign of more things to come, not just in terms of signing players quickly and stuff, but in a more general sense of the way that the club's going.
There's also more positive news, Alison, at the weekend when Jullien put a message out. There was pictures of him training and he was kind of saying, right, let's go, kind of raring to go and get back into it again. He has been out for a long time and we've spoken about might be a phased return for him, but just good to see him back out in the training pitch and talking like he's ready for action. Yeah,
without doubt. I think that'll be 13 months he's been out for, so I think it probably will take him a bit of time just to find his feet in a match situation, get that sharpness back and get his touch back. But for me, I think he's probably the first choice centre-half when everyone is fully fit. I think he definitely comes in and offers something. My view would be that I think it will be Jullien and Cameron Carter Vickers who pair up if they're all fit. I think that would be the first choice defensive pairing. I think his leadership, I think his influence, I think his defensive attributes are laudable, and I think Celtic have missed him at points last season and again this season. I think a lot of people would be encouraged to know that he's on his way back, because I think it seemed as though it was hanging over the club for a bit. I think he was due back originally around the end of September, October, and then it just seemed to be getting kicked down the road every so often. So I think there's maybe been a few bumps in the road in terms of his rehabilitation, but getting him back would be welcome.
Sean, do you go that a welcome addition back to the squad, Jullien, and let's see where he's at?
Aye, of course. Aye. It was good to see his wee message. Good to see him back in training. I reckon that obviously when he's fit, the centre-back quartet of Carter Vickers, Jullien himself, Welsh and Starfelt is a decent crop to choose from going forward for me. That's the only thing I suppose is none of them are left-footed. But as I've said a good few times on here, Jullien did play there for Toulouse, and some right-footers even prefer playing on the left side, like Van Dijk, for instance. So it's not as alarming as some might make out. And to be honest, I've had a quick think here. I think Stephen McManus is maybe the last bona fide first team consistently chosen left-footed centre-back. I can't remember. I can't really think of another one after his kind of time where it was consistently a left-footed centre-back there. But I might be wrong, right enough. I'm sure somebody will let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. But no, I think the centre back quartet, I think that if all are fit, I don't really see another centre back being signed or anything. I think that would be an acceptable level of centre backs, especially since, again, this quote of Andrew's. I don't actually think I've ever read out the full quote, but trust me, it is basically him saying that's the one area of his team he would not like to rotate. If he can get away with not rotating the centre backs, then that is who should stay the same for the majority of the games. So having any more than the 4, I think, would be slightly foolish.
Well, Simon Fideni comes in and says he hopes that we don't sell Welsh to Udinese.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there was reports linking Welsh with a move to Udinese at Alison. To me, that's a non-starter at this moment in time, the way Celtic are with their centre-backs. I guess it'd be the same for yourself.
I think on first viewing, that would be your conclusion. I think you would want to hang on to him, especially I think he does show some promise. On the other hand, I think the reality is that everyone has their price. I think if they to come back in and put down a figure on the table that was beyond the expectation of anyone, then all of a sudden you find yourself in the position of really having to think hard about it. I think until it gets to that stage, then it's almost dismissed. But you just never know. It depends how much a club maybe want to get him, and if it gets to a certain financial level, then Celtic then have a decision to make.
John, you agree with that? That Welsh obviously has his price, but it's not been met at the minute.
Aye, it's a no thanks from me at the minute. I think I know his game time has been limited when both Carter Vickers and Starfelt have been available, and that might even become even more true when Jullien's available. But I like him. I think he's a capable player. I think he has a future at the club longer term. Certainly not for the kind of $1.5 million fee being quoted in some outlets today. Anyway, that is a non-starter, to use your term, Tony. I think, and I've went on about this before as well, Ange trusted him rather than Carl Starfelt initially with the positional switch in a big game against AZ. If you remember me going on about it, the switching from right centre-back to left centre-back, it's not as easy as what it sounds. He trusted him to do it. That was a challenge I think he rose to on that occasion. He's had a few not so great moments as well, like against Livingston, the Livingston goal at Almonvale and stuff, but he's still learning, and I'm nowhere near ready to see him go, and neither should Celtic be.
Rab McEwen comes in, morning Rab, he says have to be selling money, and David Bradley says keep the boy, he's getting better all the time. Michael Dayton throws this one in and says, when does Celtic show up or sign up Ange's manager going forward? Now there's a thought, Sean.
Yep.
Do they tie up the manager? Or do you think the manager's saying we'll work on the players first and then you can come to me? Or
he very well might be saying that, aye. But I think, was it yourself or was it Alison? I can't remember. I said it to one of the two of you last week anyway, that you've got to remember the manager's contract got to be dealt with at some point. I think given the recruitment drive that you're on and the style of football, his style of football that you're recruiting them to play, I think you need to get him sorted as well.
Alison, would you tie the manager down as soon as possible too?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. It's in terms of some security. I think though, in other aspects, I think it's not unusual in football for managers to be on 1 year loan contracts. I remember it did cause a stushy at first. I remember Martin and Neil being on a 1 year loan contract, and there was all sorts of chat about it. But I think it's fairly commonplace now. But I think for all parties, it would maybe be beneficial. The only other thing you would say is that given how he has been backed in recent transfer windows, I think you can see there is a clear trust in the manager. I don't think anyone is anticipating the relationship coming to an end anytime soon. However, as we've seen in the not so distant past, things can change very, very quickly. And at least if you have a financial security that you know if someone does come in and cherry pick your manager, that it can sweeten the pill when you're left with at least some credit in the bank.
Well, Frank comes in and says a rolling 1 year contract is perfectly fine for me with Ange. David Bradley says, I agree, definitely get Ange tied up. And Rab McEwen says, seems like all signing 4 year deals, so give Ange the same. There you go, Sean. Nail him down, tie him down, just keep him here. That's what the Celtic supporters are saying.
Seems to be the war cry, aye.
And on that positive note, we'll end the Monday bulletin. Hope you all have a wonderful day. No doubt tomorrow it'll all be changed overnight again. But we look forward to see what the week brings It's never a dull moment when you follow Celtic. Have a great day, guys. All the best. Thanks for your contribution, Alison, Sean. Always enjoy it.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
Tony. Cheers, guys.